For one of Washington's most prominent lawmakers, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell appearing to freeze for a second time in recent months.
What are your thoughts on running for re-election in 2026?
What are my thoughts about what?
Running for re-election in 2026.
That's
Did you hear the question, Senator? Running for re-election in 2026?
yes.
All right, I'm sorry, you all. We're going to need a minute. Senator Benny.
That incident sparking concerns about politicians' abilities to do their job, and neither party is immune to that. Let's bring in our panel. David Carlucci, a former New York State Democratic senator, and Elizabeth McDonald is host of the Evening Edit on Fox Business. There's no doubt, as many times as we have all seen that, since it has happened, you feel for the senator, and we wish him well. But you see that happening, and, you know, it's no surprise that it re-sparks this debate over term limits in Washington. Where do you fall in all of this, Elizabeth?
You know, it's interesting because it's the one area where both sides of the aisle agree that they don't want to feel the pain and have their politicians put through pain who represent them. You know, it was hard to see that he was even going to try to take more questions. You feel for him, right? So it's interesting. This is the same story that came up in '94 with the contract with America. There was a big push for term limits. I think term limits is different from age limits. Age limits, it's more about are they compos mentis to be able to do the job, right? Because if you have term limits, then you lose a lot of expertise. That's the argument. And we know that 16 states now have term limits. It'd be a tough thing to do because you need 2/3 of the states, 2/3 of both houses to do it. It would be asking politicians to vote themselves out of office. So, you know, it's a tough story. But now you could see more and more people are saying, wait a second. Should there be age limits on the job?
David, she mentioned that you're hearing this from both sides of the aisle. This is a Dem Rep, Dean Phillips, on term limits. For goodness sake, the family, friends, and staff of Senators Feinstein and McConnell are doing them and our country a tremendous disservice. It's time for term limits for Congress and the Supreme Court and some basic human decency. Where are you on this?
Well, I think it's a big, it's a blanket issue, right, where you just say term limits, it's a good idea, but it would throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? The Constitution is clear on this. There is no term limits. There's no age limits. In order to do that, we would need a constitutional amendment. And the question is, if we even agree that there should be age limits, what's the age? And we know that Congress is getting older, the Senate, now the oldest Senate we've had. But
the president,
the oldest president we've had. But our population is aging as well. So I think that if we just did this blanket, throw everyone out at a certain age, or even
nobody's trying to throw anybody out, but there is a serious discussion being had right now, and I mentioned the president because this is a question that is being asked, obviously, of voters heading into possible re-election for President Biden, as he is running again at 80 years old right now. And when questioned about voters are questioned on his age, 77% say that he is too old for another turn. This is an AP NORC Center poll list.
Yeah, and, even Jimmy Carter a few years ago said, I couldn't handle the job at 80. He said I would hope there would be age limits. That's Jimmy Carter in 2019. Also in that same poll, that 51% felt Trump would be too old. So I point that out because both sides of the aisle are now saying, what about the least represented contingent in Congress that are now having the loudest voices? It's millennials. I mean, David and I were talking, I think the median age is like 56, 58.
Yeah. House, yeah.
So, it's age limits. It's also, we need more and new ideas coming in.
Well, there's a millennial running for president right now on the GOP side,
yes.
right? Vivek Ramaswamy, he often brings that up. I believe he did so on the debate stage, that he's the first millennial to be running for the White House. Real quickly, this is just some of what is bringing up these concerns, just some of what we've seen from Biden, Feinstein, and McConnell. Okay,